Hi guys, Josiah Willis with Compass Real Estate, Compass of Washington. And today we're going to talk about the rent versus buy scenario. So many people that I've actually run in contact with are always asking this question on should I rent or should I buy, especially considering where we're at in the market cycle for the greater Seattle area. So many people are afraid to pull the trigger on purchasing a property and will tell me, I'm going to wait until the market crashes or until prices go down and interest rates decrease. So where I would say to that is let's get down to brass tacks and figure out what is the actual comparison, side by side comparison from a numbers perspective. So what are the numbers telling us? If you follow me or if you've ever heard of me before, I'm actually a University of Washington grad, Foster School of Business, where I majored or concentrated in finance. So I'm a big numbers guy, I'm a proponent of numbers and having that tell the story versus human emotion. So let's get into it. I'm going to show you a calculator that was presented by Home Street at the time by the name of Omid. He is actually a loan officer. Shout out to him because he actually created this calculator. But we're going to get into the nitty gritty details of doing the comparison so that you may actually take a look at the numbers and what they're telling you to make a more informed decision. So FYI, this is actually currently being recorded in July, July 23rd to be exact. So you can kind of know we're still in the middle of COVID for these numbers, but I will be as straightforward as possible. So let's get into it, guys. All right, guys, so here's the calculator. As I mentioned, it was created by Home Street Bank, Omid Salashore, and he was a loan officer. But this is obviously Caliber Real Estate. Caliber Real Estate has now joined forces with Compass Real Estate, so I wanted to give you an update. We're now Caliber Group with Compass. That is just a couple housekeeping items, but this is what the calculator looks like. I'm going to run through this with you and I'm going to do an actual live example so that you can actually see where we're coming from here to show the comparison between rent and buy. So everything in green on this calculator is spaces that we're supposed to change with our input of numbers, and then anything that's in white is automatically calculated off of that. So took Hannah, the first time home buyer. This is an example, and I'm going to show you how first plug in all this information using real life examples, a real home that just sold in Renton, the 98058 zip code. I'm taking the median sales price, which is about 500,000, and I'm going to be plugging those numbers into this calculator and then taking what the rent would be for a similar house, similar size per month, and then doing a calculation. So all that to say, let's get going. Basically, what I'm starting here with is I'll show you the house I'm using as an example. Okay, so we got a house here. Kind of confusing. This says Kirkland Court Southeast, but this is actually in Renton. 98058 is the zip code. Based on what Zillow has said in this zip code, it's about a $500,000 median price. So that's why I picked this house. So we're taking a $500,000 purchase price, which is what this ended up selling for. Kind of give you an idea of what the house looks like by running through these photos. Overall, pretty clean house. Nothing too spectacular, but nothing too poor either. Kitchen. This is a 4-bedroom house. Let's see, popcorn ceilings. It's kind of interesting. So overall, you can tell this is a split oval, but overall you can tell it's in pretty good shape. Oh, we have a sauna here. That's pretty cool. Laundry room, workout room, which would be another bedroom, deck, good condition, yard, garage, attached garage. So that kind of gives you an idea of the house. This would make a great rental as well, but it sold in 3 days, and this was in May of this year. So bathrooms are 2.75, square footage is 2,120 square feet. So all that to say, let's plug this in to our numbers. So we got a purchase price of $500,000 for the buy side. Now down payment, I will go through this in another video, so keep your eye out on that, where I'm going to be talking about getting pre-approved for a loan and the different loan packages. So we're going to keep this pretty simple for now, and we'll just say you can get as low as 3.5% down It's a myth. A lot of people think that they have to have 20% down, but in reality, you can get a 3.5% down loan, either FHA or conventional even. You just have to pay private mortgage insurance, which we'll talk about. But basically, anything under 20% down, the bank's going to require mortgage insurance in case of default because it's a little more risky for them from the buying perspective. So we're going to run this at 3.5% down, 10% down, and the standard 20% down that most people think you have to have. Starting off, we'll put 3.5% down, and then total points and closing costs, we'll keep that at $4,000. Items prepaid at closing, we'll just say $2,000 in case we made an offer on the house and we asked the seller to cover some of the closing costs. Upfront mortgage insurance, that's on the high side most likely. We're gonna look at what that would be by going to a mortgage insurance calculator. So if the property value is $500,000 and we're putting 3.5% down, that means 500,000 times 0.965. That's in total loan amount that the bank would be loaning at $482,500, fixed 30 years. Right now, interest rates can be as low as 2.98% if you have a good debt to income ratio, which is talked about here, which I'll mention in another video, and credit score of over 760. Number of borrowers, I'm just going to put one on this loan basically. I'm going to calculate this. So PMI payment would be $233.21. Basically, principal would be $830 and interest would be $1,198 in terms of the loan. So total monthly payment would be around that. I'm going to end up putting the PMI separately into the calculator. So $233.21, let's do that. And that would be, I'm going to have to play with the numbers here to get it more precise. I want it to show sorry guys. Basically, this needs to be 0. The reason why is because you can either choose upfront mortgage insurance fee, or you can do a monthly payment option, or a combination, but we're going to just do a monthly payment option. So I need to adjust this in order to get this closer to the payment that we talked about. So a little bit more. So this right here is what's changing. So I need to get that. That's pretty close, but not quite there yet. There we go. That's really close. Okay, so we got 2, 2, 1, 15. Going back here, 2, 3, 3. We'll go a little higher. No, that's not gonna work. We'll just go high, a little higher just to be conservative. Okay, so we got that. Now our interest rate, our APR, we're going to use APR. So APR oftentimes includes fees, and mortgage interest rate wouldn't include these fees that the bank charges when they underwrite a loan. So we'll just use, let's see, 2.98. Actually, we'll do 3 here, and 2.98 here. Okay. Now, property tax, where we get that? We will go to the property and the listing and look at what the property taxes are. So annual property taxes are $4,712 on this property. We need to calculate that over monthly amount. So doing a quick calculation. Okay, I'll double check what that was. 4712. So $393. Let's just do that. Okay, so normally, just as an average, this obviously depends on the year the house was built, but home insurance, we're going to just say on an average basis is $1,200 a year. So we'll divide that by 12. That'd be $100. Probably on the high side, but this house was built in 1977, so probably fair. We're just going to say no association dues here, no other monthly expenses, and then we'll move up here to what the rent would be. So for rent, I took this exact address and I put it into a tool that I like to use called Rent-A-Meter, and I can sort by how many beds the house has by the address, and then how far back I'm going to calculate out what rents are in the area. So I have it 3 months, the prior 3 months, radius is 5 miles, and I clicked Analyze Address. So you can see it's showing the house right here, and it's basically going and comparing all these other houses that they have rent data on, and it's assembling it based on size, based on number of beds, baths, building type, whether it be apartment, house, or condo. In this case, house. We're going to be looking at the median here, which is sort of what we did with purchase price in the specific zip code we're talking about. So I'm going to take rent of $2,400, and I'm going to plug that into the calculator. Okay. Then I'm going to go down here, and I'll explain these charts later, but we're going to keep going on in order to put more data in. So tax bracket, this is important because depending on the tax bracket you're in, if you're able to buy a house, you can write off some mortgage insurance, or sorry, you can write off yes, some mortgage insurance and then also mortgage interest, depending on the purchase price of the house. There are some rules that were that changed according to interest write-off, but if you're under a certain threshold in terms of purchase price and loan amount, you can still write off interest, which I believe we still qualify for this under this assumption of the purchase price for this house. So tax bracket, we're just going to kind of pick a middle of the road tax bracket, which probably makes sense based on the purchase price of who would be buying this house at this purchase price. So we're going to say 22%. Is mortgage insurance tax deductible? Yes. Annual house price appreciation. We're going to go on the conservative side and say 4%. So on the greater outskirts of the greater Seattle area, a lot of appreciation has happened because affordability is still greater. And there's quite a few people moving up from California and moving up here for tech jobs because they're getting paid the same that they were getting paid by living in California, in Silicon Valley area, San Francisco, LA, and things of that nature. But the actual cost of living is less than California. Most of the companies they were working for down in California are up here. As you know, that a lot of tech companies have now moved in this area, with Facebook and Google committing more space on the east side, and then also with Oculus, which is a Facebook-owned company up here. Then you've got DocuSign, then you've got Costco's headquarters up here. You got Boeing, you've got obviously Microsoft and Amazon. So all that to say, appreciation is looking good over the long term. So 4% is probably pretty decent in terms of an estimation, especially for this zip code. Time frame, we'll do 5 years. Expenses to sell house, what your property will be worth, and then with the like in the next 5 years, what your property will be worth, and then if you had the assumption you're going to sell in 5 years, that will be the holding period. And then expenses to sell 9%, which they often say is around 9% when you include title, escrow, buying and selling side of the commissions. And so in your closing costs, they calculate that out to about 9%, and then also your excise tax that you have to pay when you sell property. So that all is kind of bundled up into this 9% here. And then this is what's important here, rate of return on cash invested in lieu of down payment. So what this means basically is if you decided to rent versus buy, and you were going to take the money that you would have put towards a down payment on the house if you were going to buy, but instead, since you were renting, took that money, that would have gone to a down payment and you stuck it into an interest-bearing savings account based on what you could get for your money currently would be about actually 1.1% based on the best savings rate that I can find currently right now. This would be city here. So national savings rate average is 0.09%, but the highest I've seen is city. Right now they're offering a yield APY, which is annual percentage yieldage, 1.1% basically. So I put that into the calculator. So now let's look at essentially the assumptions and what happens over the next 5 years if we're comparing if you would have purchased versus if you continue to rent. So all that to say, let's recap. Purchase price, $500,000, 3.5% down, total closing cost of $4,000, items prepaid at closing. What the seller would have basically covered out of that would be $2,000, nothing paid up front for mortgage insurance. Update that. Mortgage balance $482,500, and then this is your AP or your mortgage interest rate, and then your APR, which includes some other costs for the loan, and then basically your mortgage insurance, your monthly property taxes, monthly property insurance, and then no HOAs. So you come to a total monthly housing expense, which is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. That's what PD stands for, of $2,763 versus the rent option of $2,400. Now, what this really comes down to is, one, the monthly tax benefit. So if you buy, you get to write off some of your interest and insurance, as far as I know, based on what the current rules are. So $403 you get to basically write off from your taxes because you're paying that interest, which the IRS allows you to write off in this scenario. So that's a tax savings essentially that you're not getting by paying rent. So keep that in mind. And then after tax monthly payment, basically because of that tax savings on the buy side, ends up dropping your payment to $2,360 versus the rent, which you didn't get to offset the tax savings by, which still stays at $2,400. So even when you actually look at after tax, you're already saving money compared to the rent in the sense that you get to write off on some of your taxes. Now, and part of that's calculated using the tax bracket you're in, and I made as an assumption there. So that will change depending on your income or your yearly income. But moving forward, the cash required to close in this situation would be $23,500 in order to pay closing costs, and then also what you're bringing to the table in terms of your down payment. So that would require $23,500 in this scenario. That's not even including if you get grant money from down payment assistance programs. If you're a first-time home buyer, which I'll talk about in another video, you can get up to $10,000 of down payment assistance for 0% loan, essentially, for your down payment, which could help factor into this depending on your income level, but I'm going to talk about that in a future video, so don't worry about that here. All you need to know is $23,500 you bring to the down or to the closing for the purchase side. When rent, you would be charged your first month's rent and then last month's rent as well, which would become to $4,800. So that's essentially, if you started a new lease, that's what you'd be bringing to the table. So quite a big difference there. But if you have some in savings that you could use to put that down, that'd be great. Okay, so we've talked about the cash required to close. Now we'll move forward. Moving to future value of assets, basically this is a scenario comparing what after 5 years, which is our term, if you remember, that we were talking about holding the property or your lease, what that would look like in terms of value after appreciation. So from the buy side, if you were to invest into buying a house and you earned 4% year over year per year average in terms of appreciation, which is probably not uncommon for this area on what the state expects in terms of population growth based on our job market, you would expect after costs in selling your house after 5 years to have $124,761 in equity, essentially. Now, this basically is net proceeds, as you can see. Future value of cash invested in lieu of down payment is the rent side. So if you would have taken the value of what you would have put towards a down payment and instead invested it in a money market account, you would have had only about, moving back up here, 1.1% year over year of value. That would have only yielded you $19,751 at the end of 5 years, had you rather have invested in the property in purchasing. So that's quite a difference after 5 years. I mean, look at that. And what's interesting also is the extra wealth you would have would have been $105,009 versus $0 of extra wealth in rent. This basically takes out your down payment that you put in and says the extra wealth just from appreciating in that house asset, not including what you put down, essentially. So quite a stark difference here. It's pretty crazy to think, but the reason why this says 19,751 versus taking the full 23,500 to put into a savings account is because this is just saying what you would have had as a down payment on the purchase price versus the 23,000. So I know this looks higher, but basically what I'm saying is if you took 3.5% of 500,000, that'd be $17,500. So this calculation doesn't include the other closing costs you're bringing to the table, like the down payment of 3.5% plus closing costs shows on the buy side right here for cash to close. So keep that in mind. So basically only a minimum of 3.5% down. If you were to stick that in a savings account versus buy, that would be $17,500. And you would have stuck that in an account for 5 years, earning 1.1%, you'd be left with $19,751. Hopefully that's clear. But basically, that's a huge difference in value from the rent to buy option. And now let's play a little bit with the numbers here. So let's say if you had just a small appreciation in value, maybe the economy didn't do very well going forward, but still you're at 85,000 versus 19,000, and you're at 66,000 of extra wealth over a 5-year period. That's pretty substantial. Now let's even play with this. Let's do 3 years. Obviously, we're bridging the gap here, but 38,732 versus 19,324 and 19,408 of extra wealth. Basically, that's still even on the worst case scenario in 3 years, basically. So, I mean, think about that, guys. That really gives you a numbers perspective, especially when you're looking at a month-to-month basis with the interest savings or the tax savings on your interest and insurance payments that you don't get with rent. You're actually below the rent line for this house, basically in this area in terms of your monthly payment. That's pretty crazy. And that's with 3.5% down, which is the most leverage you'll be. So if you put 10% down, look how much that drops, even more compared to the 2,400. So you'd be saving $382 a month in taxes. Yes, you'd have to put more down, 56,000 versus the 4,800. And then over 5 years, or over 3 years, sorry, I still have 3 here. Yeah, over 3 years at 2.5% down, you're at 69,128 versus 52,000, and additional wealth of 16,000. So it's a little closer here. But if you went to 4% again, look at the difference now. It drops or it changes by 40 grand basically. And that's over a 3-year period. So if you're holding it longer, which I recommend you hold real estate for as long as you can, that'd be 153,000 to 54,000. That's still a huge difference as well. You hold it for 5 years. Now, if you hold it for 10 years, look at that. Look at the difference. 331. So this is sort of an eye-opening, supposed to be eye-opening for you guys. And there's another thing I want to show you real quick. Okay, so this is kind of another slide I wanted to show you guys. This is actually data from a title company. And keep in mind, title and escrow companies, this one's from Chicago Title, but title and escrow companies are seeing closings of property sales on a consistent basis, because that's what sellers and buyers go through, is title and escrow in order to close a transaction. So they're seeing live, up-to-date data showing what homes are selling for, if prices are increasing, and they can assemble data. Basically, this PowerPoint came from a VP of Chicago Title that presented to our office, and he's showing in this slide the change in interest, or the change in prices of homes during the beginning and during the end of a recession, based on different recessions we've had over the past few decades. So as you can see, the question here he's asking is, do recessions cause home prices to drop? Well, if you actually look at the blue is the start of the recession, and then by the end of the recession is shown here in orange. Basically, what you're seeing is, in this case, in 1973 to 75, 37K was the median price in this location. To be honest, I'm not sure. This might be a national, because it's from the sources from the Federal Reserve, so this is probably on a national level. But in 1973 and 75, started the recession at 37K, and at the end, the median was 41K. 1980, 74K went up to 78K by the end of the recession, and 1981, 84K up to 87K in the recession. Keep in mind, these recessions are generally no more than 2 years. This was all in 1 year. This was, well, I guess they're showing it separately here. But basically, 1990 to 1991, that was only 1 year, 146K to 151K. 2001, which was the tech bubble burst, 2011 to 214. Now, 2008 and 2010, it was definitely a different type of recession, because it was actually a mortgage crisis. So it was a mortgage-led crisis where people were mortgaging multiple properties and putting fake names, and there was no income verification on loans, and a lot of different things that led up to this. So this is a very unique outlier, you could say, in the sense that this was actually real estate caused recession. So obviously a lot of things have been passed since this happened in terms of law to hopefully won't allow it to happen again. But essentially it was one of the only recessions in the past few decades, 4 decades actually, that shows a decrease at the end of the recession versus when it started from the beginning of the recession. So overall, what I'm getting at is that investing in real estate is generally a safe bet, even in the case of recession. So when people tell me I'm going to wait till the market crashes, it doesn't mean that prices won't dip a little bit and they can get into a better home with a better price point. But at the same time, with interest rates being what they are today, and especially from a historical standpoint, it doesn't really make sense to think that you're going to wait it out, especially when we're talking about population coming in and inventory being so low in the current market right now in the greater Seattle area. Inventory continues to dive down, partly because of COVID and sellers probably not listing, but also because we have such large demand, especially considering the demand is so high because of interest rates being so low, that trying to time the market where you're going to wait till it drops could have sacrificed 2 to 3 years of appreciation potential that you could have had you got in while you could have around now. So that's just an FYI, guys. I'm not trying to push you in any one direction, because obviously we're not fortune tellers. We can't see where things are going in terms of guessing where things will be. But like I said before, this is an example of what interest rates are at now versus historical. So think about it. We're at like 2.98 or low threes if you have a higher debt to income ratio or less of a good credit score. So think about that. Like historically, look at how high it's gotten in the past. So 18% here, like that's nuts. So from that perspective, where we're at, just basically is almost like free money that you're borrowing, in the sense that inflation is probably higher than 2%, probably higher than 3% when you factor in oil pricing as well, which is not considered part of the consumer price index, which is the base for inflation. So inflation is probably higher than what you're actually borrowing money at, which means that the dollar is losing value relative to what you're actually being charged in interest. So in effect, you basically are getting free money if you buy now. Basically, yeah, this is also talking about Amazon's retreat from New York, and Amazon's plan to put a bunch of new office space on the east side, and they're doubling down in this area and market. So all that to say, guys, going back to our example um, of this calculator, all that to say, basically, this kind of gives you a better indication of what it would mean to compare renting to buying in this market. Obviously, there's some things here that I took the liberty to kind of estimate on, but these are not unlike numbers. These are not pie in the sky numbers. As you can see, I picked real numbers off of online and picked a real house scenario and what real rent rates are and compared them side by side. So if you are thinking of possibly buying or selling, and selling and then buying, give me a call. You can reach me at 360-560-8073, and I'd love to discuss, no pressure, but discuss your options so that at least you're making a decision based on facts versus either fear or emotion when it's not backed by facts. So like I said, it still is a great time to possibly look at buying, especially if you're going to be holding for the long term in this area. And yeah, I definitely think it's worth doing. So give me a call. I would love to run through an actual legit scenario for you if you find a house that you are interested in purchasing. But yeah, give me a call and we'll discuss it further from there. Otherwise, guys, look forward to my next video, which will show you a little bit more about the loan process and how to get pre-approved for a loan and what type of loan products there are. So look for that in your email as well. So as always, this is Josiah signing off, and take care, guys. Thank you. Bye.